The sky over Clivar Prime was a dark, swirling canvas of smoke and fire. Cities that had stood for centuries lay in ruins, their once-proud towers bent like broken metal reeds. The air was thick with the stench of molten rock and scorched ozone, and the sound of distant explosions echoed across the empty streets. The Xylar Dominion had struck hard, faster than anyone could imagine. The Coalition worlds had never faced an enemy like this. Machines that moved with perfect coordination, ships that fired weapons more powerful than any defense system, and warriors whose speed and strength defied known physics. Everywhere, hope seemed to flicker and fade like a dying ember. Lyra moved carefully through the ruins of what had once been the capital's grand plaza. Her three eyes scanned the horizon constantly, reflecting the glow of fires still burning in scattered buildings. She was young, not yet fully trained as a scientist, but this mission had fallen to her because she had volunteered. Someone had to act. Someone had to send the distress signal. No one else had the courage or perhaps the hope to try. Every corner she turned revealed more evidence of the Dominion's cruelty. Ships had crashed into buildings like falling meteors. Streets that had been crowded with life were now strewn with debris and remnants of alien citizens who had tried to flee. Lyra's heart ached, but she forced herself to keep moving. Fear would paralyze her only if she let it, and she could not afford that. She finally reached the communications hub, a sleek structure that had somehow survived the initial bombardment. The antenna arrays were twisted and bent, several panels shattered. Lyra knelt, inspecting the damaged systems, her hands moving with practiced precision. Sparks flew from broken circuits as she repaired the power conduits, her mind racing with calculations and possibilities. Every second counted. If the Dominion discovered her here, she would not survive long enough to complete the transmission. Lyra activated the main console, the screens flickering to life, displaying streams of broken signals and partial coordinates. She pulled up the galaxy map, focusing on a distant sector, almost a myth among her people. The coordinates pointed to the Milky Way, a place known only through fragmented reports and legends passed down through generations. Humanity. The humans were said to be unpredictable, reckless, and yet astonishingly resourceful. Entire civilizations had fallen to the Xylar before, but rumors whispered that humans had survived conflicts that should have destroyed them. Lyra's fingers hovered over the transmission key. Sending a message this far was dangerous. She might never hear a response, but it was the only chance they had. Taking a deep breath, she began composing the signal. She carefully encoded every detail, the location of her planet, the strength and tactics of the Xylar forces, the desperate need for aid. She paused at one line, unsure if she should include it, then added it anyway. The humans had to know just how dire the situation was. She ended with a plea, simple and unadorned. "If you can help, come. We are running out of time." Lyra stepped back, her body shaking. There was no immediate response. There would not be. It could take years or even centuries for anyone to receive it, but at least the call had been made. Hours passed. Lyra sat in the darkened hub, listening to the distant rumble of the Xylar fleet overhead. She remembered her training, the stories of her ancestors who had faced impossible odds with courage and skill, but even their bravery had its limits. And now, in this moment, she was alone. The thought was terrifying. Her species had been strong and proud, but the Dominion had outmatched them at every turn. How could a single young scientist hope to make a difference? A sudden vibration shook the building. Lyra looked up sharply. The Dominion's patrol drones had entered the city perimeter. They moved with quiet, deadly precision, scanning for survivors, for resistance, for any spark of hope. She had only minutes, perhaps seconds, to hide. She ducked behind a console, her heart pounding as the drones swept past. She held her breath, willing the metal sensors not to detect her presence. She could almost feel the creatures' cold, calculating gaze, but they moved on, and she allowed herself a single, silent sigh of relief. As night fell over Clivar Prime, Lyra continued her work. She managed to repair part of the hub's long-range communication system, ensuring that the signal could be sustained, amplified, and repeated automatically. Even if she were captured or killed, the call for help would keep going, traveling across space until someone heard it. That thought gave her a small, fragile sense of comfort. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance. The next day, Lyra ventured outside once more. She needed supplies, spare components for the transmitter, anything that might keep the message alive. The streets were eerily silent, broken only by the occasional distant boom or the shriek of a distant fighter. She moved carefully, scanning constantly for threats, until she reached a supply depot. The building was damaged but still intact, its doors hanging on broken hinges. Inside, she found what she needed: power cells, communication relays, and enough fuel to keep the transmitter active for weeks if necessary. She worked quickly, mindful of the time, mindful of the risk. By evening, Lyra returned to the hub, exhausted but resolute. She set up the new components, testing each one with meticulous care. The equipment hummed to life, a soft, steady sound that was almost comforting amid the chaos. She allowed herself a brief moment of reflection, thinking about her world, her people, and the lives that depended on her success. They had fought bravely, but they could not win this war alone. Humanity was their last hope. Then, without warning, the ground trembled violently beneath her feet. A Dominion strike team had landed nearby. The building shook as explosions tore through the surrounding area, sending debris crashing through the walls. Lyra pressed herself against the floor, shielding herself from the worst of it. The room filled with dust and smoke, and for a moment she feared she would be crushed, her efforts destroyed. But the transmitter remained intact, still sending the signal across the galaxy, still carrying their desperate plea for aid. She knew she could not stay. Moving carefully, Lyra packed what she could carry, securing critical components for the transmitter. She stepped into the chaos outside, her mind racing. She had to survive not for herself, but for the millions of lives depending on her. Every step was dangerous, every corner could hide a Dominion soldier, but she refused to give up. Fear would not control her. Desperation might drive her forward, but it would not define her. She was a scientist, a guardian of hope, and she would do everything in her power to protect that hope. As Lyra moved toward a safe zone outside the city, she looked up at the sky. The fires of her world reflected in her eyes, a vivid reminder of all that had been lost. But somewhere far beyond the stars, the signal she had sent was traveling. Somewhere, perhaps a species known for its courage, its ingenuity, and its unyielding spirit would receive it. Somewhere, humanity would respond. The thought brought her a strange comfort. She did not know if they would arrive in time. She did not know if the humans would answer. But she had done what she could. She had made the call. And in that act, amid the ruins and the fear, she felt a spark of hope, a fragile, fleeting thing, but enough to keep her moving forward. Lyra ducked into a narrow alley, listening as Dominion patrols swept past, oblivious to her presence. She pressed herself against the wall, her breathing shallow but controlled. In her mind, she replayed the final moments before the signal was sent, imagining the humans receiving it, deciding to act, and racing across the stars to help. It was a comforting vision, one she clung to as she navigated the ruined streets, moving toward whatever safety she could find. Night deepened, and the city seemed to hold its breath. Even the fires burned lower, casting long, flickering shadows across shattered buildings. Lyra found a small shelter in the remains of an old library, barricading herself inside with a few salvaged supplies. She tended to minor wounds, checked the transmitter's automated functions, and finally allowed herself a brief moment to rest. Her body ached, her mind was exhausted, but her spirit remained intact. She had done her duty. The signal was out. Now all she could do was wait. Outside, the wind carried the faint echo of destruction, but within the walls of the library, amid broken shelves and scattered books, Lyra felt a small, quiet certainty. Humanity had been called. And somewhere in the infinite expanse of space, the human response was already in motion. When they arrived, they would bring something the Xylar Dominion could never anticipate: courage, creativity, and a relentless drive to protect life against all odds. And with that thought, Lyra allowed herself to finally close her eyes, resting for the first time in days, ready to face whatever came next. Light years away, aboard the human flagship Valiant Dawn, the bridge was alive with energy and anticipation. Commander Elias Kane stood at the center, his hands resting lightly on the rail before the main viewing screen. The crew around him moved with precision, speaking in clipped tones as they monitored sensors, communications, and propulsion systems. The signal had arrived, a transmission unlike anything humanity had received before. Its urgency was clear, its plea was desperate, and its source, the planet Clivar Prime, was on the brink of annihilation. Kane studied the decoded message again, watching the glowing coordinates blink on the holographic display. Lyra's words were simple, almost childlike in their clarity, but they carried the weight of an entire civilization's survival. He felt the familiar surge of human determination. This was not a routine mission. This was a call for help that demanded ingenuity, courage, and decisiveness, the very traits humanity had earned its reputation for across countless battles and conflicts. "Admiral Kane," Lieutenant Myra Chen said, stepping forward, her voice steady. The Coalition world is surrounded by Xylar fleets. Their planetary defenses are still active, but they are badly damaged. Sensors indicate the Xylars have superior numbers and firepower. Prepare the fleet for immediate hyperspace jump. I want every ship armed and ready. This is going to be a demonstration of why humans are never underestimated. And now, across an uncharted sector of space, they had a chance to prove themselves once again. The fleet of human warships shimmered in hyperspace, stretching across miles of space in formation. Each vessel was designed for adaptability, with modular weapons systems, AI-assisted navigation, and crews trained to think creatively under pressure. Kane knew the Xylars would expect predictable attacks, precise formations, and calculated strikes. What they did not anticipate was human unpredictability, battles fought with audacity and imagination, tactics that defied logic but worked because humans understood one thing: survival demanded ingenuity. As they exited hyperspace near Clivar Prime, the first sight of the planet struck the humans. Fires burned on the surface like veins of molten gold, and smoke curled into the thin atmosphere, illuminated by the flashes of distant battles. Kane's stomach tightened. The aliens had been honest about the devastation. The Xylar Dominion's power was immense, but Kane did not flinch. "Deploy reconnaissance drones," he ordered. "I want eyes on every sector before we engage. And start scanning for Lyra's signal location. That transmission could be the key to coordinating with the Coalition survivors." Kane studied the data, noting weak points in the Dominion's formations, areas where the alien fleet had left gaps, and where the planetary defense grids were most vulnerable. "Commander," Chen said, pointing to the display, "their orbital defense towers are heavily armed, but we can bypass their primary firing arcs with a coordinated strike. It will require splitting our fleet into smaller squadrons and performing simultaneous jumps from multiple vectors. Gamma will infiltrate close to the surface to provide support to Coalition survivors. All movements synchronized to within milliseconds. We don't just fight them, we outsmart them." They had turned impossible situations into legendary victories before, and now they were about to do it again in a galaxy far from home. Below, on Clivar Prime, Lyra felt a strange vibration, subtle but unmistakable. She glanced at her console. Something large had entered the system, a fleet unlike any she had ever seen. A glow filled the skies, and the massive silhouettes of human ships began appearing above the burning horizon. Her heart leapt. Could this be the help she had been praying for? The first human ships descended in precise formation, their engines leaving trails of blue-white light. They did not hesitate, even in the face of the Xylar orbital defenses. Kane's fleet did not attack recklessly. Every maneuver was calculated, yet unorthodox. The Dominion, expecting conventional tactics, was caught off guard. Their laser batteries misfired, their shields faltered, and their ships scrambled to respond. Kane watched from the bridge of Valiant Dawn, issuing commands with calm precision. "Task Force Alpha, initiate flank attack. Beta, draw them north. Gamma, deploy drones to locate survivors and provide evacuation support. Remember, anticipate their reactions, but don't be predictable." Boarding pods launched from smaller vessels, carrying specially trained humans who could disable key systems within the Xylar ships. Every move was a blend of bravery, creativity, and precise timing. Lyra watched in awe from her console. Humans were unlike any species she had ever studied. They fought not just with weapons, but with imagination and courage. They did not hesitate. They did not retreat. Every action seemed reckless at first, but it carried purpose, logic, and an unshakable resolve. The Coalition forces, inspired by their arrival, began coordinating attacks alongside the humans. Ships that had once huddled in fear now moved with confidence, taking advantage of the openings the humans created. On the surface, small pockets of Coalition soldiers began emerging from their shelters, watching the human fleet in amazement. Some whispered about old legends of humanity's victories. Some simply stared, too stunned to speak. But all felt hope for the first time in months, maybe years. Humanity had arrived. The Xylar Dominion, however, did not surrender easily. Their flagship, a massive construct bristling with weapons and shields, moved to intercept Kane's fleet. From orbit, Lyra could see its size, its power, and the overwhelming firepower it commanded. But the humans responded not with fear, but with ingenuity. They divided their forces, drew the flagship into a trap, and then, in a maneuver no other species would dare, performed simultaneous hyperspace jumps around the Xylar vessel. In seconds, humans appeared behind it, above it, and beside it, attacking from every possible angle at once. The flagship shuddered under the assault. Systems failed, turrets jammed. Human boarding parties infiltrated its core, shutting down weapons and redirecting power to destabilize the massive ship. Within minutes, the mighty vessel, a symbol of Xylar dominance, was disabled. Kane's voice came over the communication channels, calm but filled with authority. "We are here to help. Stand down or face complete defeat. We are not just another species to underestimate. We are humanity, and we will protect life no matter the odds." As night fell over Clivar Prime, the human fleet held position in orbit. Fires on the planet continued to burn, but hope had returned. The Dominion forces, surprised and demoralized, retreated into space, their numbers broken and their strategy undone. Lyra prepared to coordinate with the humans directly, sending her location to their fleet and guiding them to the remaining survivors. Commander Kane, meanwhile, reviewed the battle logs. His crew had performed flawlessly, but the victory was only the beginning. The Xylar Dominion was vast, their power immense. Humanity had arrived, but the war was far from over. And yet Kane felt no fear. He felt pride, determination, and the familiar thrill that came from facing the impossible. This was what humans did. This was what they were made for. The night sky over Clivar Prime shimmered with the presence of humanity's fleet. Its blue-white lights reflected off the clouds of smoke and fire below, a beacon of hope for those who had lost everything. Lyra looked at the display, at the humans who had crossed countless light years to answer her call, and whispered softly, "Thank you." And in that moment, the galaxy changed. For the first time, the Coalition worlds realized that help had arrived. And the Xylar Dominion, for the first time, realized that humanity was unlike any enemy they had ever faced. The battle for Clivar Prime had entered its second day, but for the Coalition worlds, it felt like the beginning of a miracle. The human fleet remained in orbit, a dazzling display of precision and daring that none of the alien races had ever witnessed. Commander Elias Kane stood on the bridge of the Valiant Dawn, watching the holographic display of the battlefield below. Human ships darted through space, twisting and turning in ways that defied conventional tactics, while Xylar vessels struggled to react, their sensors unable to predict the bold maneuvers. Kane's voice was calm but filled with energy as he issued orders. Task Force Alpha, continue pressure on the northern orbital platforms. Task Force Beta, draw them further from the surface. Gamma, provide evacuation support. Remember, unpredictability is our greatest weapon. And when they improvised, they found opportunities where the Xylar saw only obstacles. Below, Lyra moved through the city streets with renewed energy. The fires still burned, and the destruction was immense, but the arrival of the human fleet had changed everything. Citizens who had once hidden in fear now emerged from shelters, helping clear debris, treating the wounded, and relaying information to surviving Coalition forces. Lyra coordinated the effort, sending precise coordinates to the humans for rescue and strategic strikes. Her voice shook at times, but it carried authority born of necessity. Humanity had given her people hope, and she refused to waste it. On the battlefield above, human ships performed feats that seemed impossible. Smaller fighters darted into the open, drawing Xylar fire while massive capital ships swooped in from angles no one would expect. Humans launched boarding pods in the middle of ongoing fire exchanges, cutting through Xylar defenses with precision. They repaired damaged ships in the middle of battle, reactivating systems and returning vessels to the fight faster than any alien crew could imagine. Kane watched as a Xylar destroyer attempted to flank Task Force Alpha. Instead of retreating or facing it head-on, the human ships executed a maneuver that no protocol would suggest. The destroyer found itself trapped between three ships approaching from different directions simultaneously, each firing at weak points identified only by human intuition and experience. The destroyer's shields overloaded, systems failing one by one until it drifted, powerless, into the void. Lyra gasped at the sight. She had studied humans through intercepted transmissions and legends, but seeing them in action was different. They fought with a combination of courage, creativity, and relentless determination that was almost incomprehensible. It was not just the weapons they wielded, it was the way they thought, reacted, and inspired those around them. Even the Coalition forces, who had been beaten down and fearful, began to emulate human tactics. Ships that once hid in the shadows now emerged, attacking with precision and bravery. A squadron of human fighters, led by Lieutenant Myra Chen, executed a daring strike against a Xylar orbital station. The station's turrets turned to target them, but Chen's team twisted through space in a coordinated dance, firing at critical nodes, jamming communications, and launching boarding pods. Within minutes, the station's defenses were neutralized. Chen's voice rang through the fleet's channels, confident and clear. "Station secured. Coalition survivors on board. We're ready for the next target." Humanity was not just fighting. They were teaching, inspiring, and changing the tide of a war that had seemed hopeless. The Xylar Dominion, however, was not easily defeated. Their command fleet regrouped, concentrating fire on the largest human capital ships. Missiles streaked through space, energy beams cut through the void, and explosions lit the dark sky with deadly beauty. Kane's bridge shook as the valiant Dawn maneuvered to avoid a massive volley. "Divert power to shields and auxiliary thrusters," Kane ordered. "Alpha, prepare a counterstrike. Beta, assist Gamma in evacuations. Timing is everything. Hit their weak points simultaneously." Capital ships twisted around incoming fire, drawing it away from coalition survivors. Fighters struck with pinpoint accuracy, while boarding teams infiltrated key enemy vessels, shutting down weapons and navigation systems. The Xylar were powerful, but their reliance on standard tactics made them predictable. Humans exploited that predictability in ways the Dominion could not calculate. Lyra observed as one of the largest Xylar warships faltered. Human boarding pods had breached its defenses, and coalition forces, emboldened by human support, had joined the assault. Sparks and fire erupted from the vessel as systems failed. It was a turning point, the first clear victory that suggested the tide could be turned. Amid the chaos, Kane allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. Humanity had traveled across countless light years to aid a distant civilization, knowing the odds were against them. They had brought not just weapons, but experience, ingenuity, and determination. In that determination, in that unyielding drive to act when others would despair, Kane saw the essence of what it meant to be human. On Clivar Prime, citizens began to whisper the name of humanity like a prayer. "They are brave, they are clever, they are fearless." Lyra herself felt tears of gratitude. She had sent a signal into the void, uncertain if anyone would ever hear it. And now here they were, humans, alive, unyielding, and changing the course of history. The Xylar Dominion, frustrated and confused, attempted a last-ditch counterattack. A massive fleet emerged from hyperspace, their weapons calibrated to crush anything in sight. Kane did not panic. He saw the opportunity hidden in their overconfidence. "Prepare the experimental units," he commanded. "Target their formation points and execute diversion maneuvers. We'll force them into traps they cannot escape." Ships were disabled, retreats blocked, and commanders confused. Lyra watched in awe as human soldiers, scientists, and pilots demonstrated skills that went beyond technology. They fought not just with machines, but with their minds. Every action was unpredictable yet effective. Every move inspired coalition forces, who now began acting with a coordination that had been impossible before. The humans were not merely allies. They were a catalyst, transforming despair into hope, fear into courage. Hours passed, and the Xylar Dominion began to falter. Their superior technology had been neutralized, not by brute force alone, but by the relentless adaptability of humanity. Kane's fleet maintained pressure, coordinating strikes, rescues, and diversions simultaneously. The Dominion's leadership was forced into retreat, their morale broken, their fleets fragmented. Lyra finally allowed herself to breathe. The planet below, though still scarred, had a chance to survive. Coalition forces moved with confidence, reclaiming strategic points and rescuing civilians. Fires were still burning, but hope had returned. Humanity had not just arrived, they had changed everything. Kane reviewed the battle logs one last time before allowing his fleet a brief respite. The humans had shown the galaxy that courage, creativity, and determination could overcome even the most insurmountable odds. It was a lesson the Xylar Dominion would never forget, and a lesson that the Coalition would carry forward as they rebuilt. Lyra, exhausted but filled with awe, stepped outside into the night air of Clivar Prime. The sky above shimmered with the presence of the human fleet, their lights reflecting in the smoke and fire below. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for their help, but for the example they had set. Humanity had shown that even in the darkest hour, there was hope, ingenuity, and courage enough to turn the tide. Somewhere across the galaxy, Kane knew the fight was far from over. The Xylar Dominion remained powerful, and their reach extended far beyond Clivar Prime. But for now, humanity had made their mark. They had arrived when no one else could, acted when others would hesitate, and inspired hope when all seemed lost. And in doing so, they reminded everyone, Coalition and Xylar alike, that humans were unlike any species they had ever encountered. Lyra watched the human ships take their positions in orbit, ready to continue the fight if necessary. She felt a sense of peace, a rare and fragile thing amidst the devastation. Humanity had unleashed their arsenal, yes, but more importantly, they had unleashed something far more powerful: hope. And for the first time in what felt like eternity, Lyra allowed herself to believe that the war could be won. The Xylar Dominion's retreat had not lasted long. Their fleets had regrouped in a nearby system, repairing damages and rallying their forces. The Dominion commanders were furious, unable to comprehend how a species they considered primitive could turn the tide of battle so decisively. Commander Kane knew that the war was far from over. The Dominion was strong, but they were rigid, predictable, and arrogant. Humanity had already proven that their ingenuity and courage could exploit every weakness. On the bridge of Valiant Dawn, Kane gathered his senior officers for a strategic briefing. Holographic displays showed the layout of Xylar installations and fleet positions. The humans, alongside coalition forces, had reclaimed control of Clivar Prime's orbit and key surface zones, but the Dominion still held the outer systems. Kane's mind worked through every possible plan. Every move had to be precise yet flexible. Every decision carried weight. "Here, that's what we know," Kane said, pointing to the display. "The Xylar fleet is regrouping here in the Narath sector. They have reinforced shields, stronger firepower, and expect a direct attack. They think we will come at them head-on, as every other species has before. That is exactly what we will not do. We are going to divide, distract, and dominate. Alpha Task Force will perform a feint, Beta will circle and cut off their reinforcements, and Gamma will target their command hub directly. Timing is everything. Synchronization is key. We cannot fail. Prepare all ships. We leave in 1 standard hour." Even the smallest alien vessels executed maneuvers that would have been considered suicidal before. Lyra felt a surge of pride. Humanity had changed everything. The fleet made the jump into Xylar space, emerging near the Narath sector. The view was overwhelming. Hundreds of Xylar warships formed a wall, their energy weapons ready, shields glowing ominously. Kane's eyes scanned the formations, calculating angles, distances, and weaknesses. Humans thrived in situations like this, when all seemed impossible, and in the midst of seemingly insurmountable odds, they moved with confidence. "Alpha, initiate feint toward the eastern perimeter," Kane ordered. "Beta, circle around to cut off reinforcements. Gamma, follow my lead and engage the hub directly. Remember, every move unpredictable, every maneuver precise." Kane led Gamma on a direct approach toward the command hub, dodging fire with precision and utilizing small fighter escorts to disable point defense systems. Every action was synchronized to the millisecond, overwhelming Xylar sensors and throwing their fleet into chaos. Lyra watched from her console on Clivar Prime as humans moved with fluid precision. Explosions erupted across the battlefield, ships twisting in impossible trajectories, and boarding pods landed on Xylar vessels with deadly accuracy. Every time the Xylar responded, humans adapted immediately, redirecting fire, repairing critical systems in mid-battle, and turning near losses into victories. A massive Xylar dreadnought attempted to block Kane's approach. Its shields glowed brighter than any other vessel, its weapons targeting his ship with lethal precision. Kane did not falter. He activated experimental thrusters, sending the Valiant Dawn in a twisting maneuver that defied prediction. The dreadnought fired relentlessly, but Kane anticipated every blast, dodging with grace and strategy. Boarding pods launched, and a team of humans infiltrated the dreadnought's core, shutting down its weapon systems and leaving it adrift. Lyra felt a thrill of hope. This was more than strategy, it was brilliance born from courage and ingenuity. Humans were not just strong, they were unpredictable, creative, and relentless. Coalition forces joined the attack, emboldened by humanity's example. Ships that had once hidden in fear now charged forward, attacking Xylar positions and securing key points. The human fleet advanced on the command hub, a massive orbital fortress bristling with turrets and defenses. Kane's approach was not direct. He led a series of maneuvers, drawing Xylar fire and redirecting it into traps. Explosions shook the hub, systems overloaded, and the shields faltered in precise sections. Humans and coalition allies boarded in coordinated waves, disabling weapons and critical infrastructure. Inside the hub, humans moved with precision and purpose. Engineers rewired systems, scientists recalibrated controls, and soldiers secured zones for coalition reinforcements. The Xylar defenders fought fiercely, but they were unprepared for the humans' combination of creativity, strategy, and daring. Every step the humans took was calculated yet bold, turning the fortress into a battlefield they controlled with skill and determination. Lyra guided coalition forces through secure pathways, evacuating survivors and coordinating attacks. The hub's commander, a massive Xylar figure with a cold, calculating presence, realized too late that his strategy had been anticipated at every turn. Humans had exploited weaknesses he did not even know existed, combining courage, ingenuity, and rapid adaptation. His defenses crumbled as boarding teams disabled key systems and coalition forces pressed forward. Kane moved through the hub with precision, coordinating teams via comms, adjusting tactics in real time. Explosions echoed through the corridors, but humans advanced relentlessly. The Xylar command hub, once a symbol of invincibility, was reduced to chaos. Systems failed, communications were disrupted, and morale among Xylar forces collapsed. Kane's voice rang through the comm channels, calm and commanding. "We are here to end this. Stand down or face total defeat. Humanity fights not just for victory, but for life, for hope, and for those who cannot defend themselves." The courage of a single species had turned despair into triumph, showing the coalition that even the strongest enemy could be overcome with ingenuity and determination. She felt a surge of hope as Xylar defenders surrendered or fled, realizing that they could no longer control the situation. Outside, the battlefield had shifted entirely. Xylar fleets that had once dominated the system now scrambled, retreating in disarray. Coalition ships moved to secure strategic points, reclaim systems, and protect survivors. Humans coordinated every action, their creativity and daring ensuring that the Dominion could not regroup effectively. Kane paused for a moment aboard Valiant Dawn, watching the results of the battle unfold. Humanity had not only fought, they had inspired. Coalition forces were now united, coordinated, and confident. The Xylar Dominion, powerful as it was, had met a species that refused to accept defeat, that turned the impossible into the achievable. Humans had done more than attack. They had transformed the battlefield into a place where hope and courage could thrive. Lyra stepped outside onto a secure platform on Clivar Prime, looking up at the human fleet. Ships glowed in the distance, a symbol of courage, ingenuity, and relentless determination. Fires still burned below, but the sky above was alive with the presence of humanity's fleet. She felt gratitude, awe, and a sense of relief. The humans had not only arrived, they had changed the course of history. The battle was far from over. Kane knew that the Xylar Dominion remained a threat, and that their reach extended far beyond this system. But the tide had turned. Humanity had demonstrated that courage, creativity, and determination could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. They had shown that hope, when combined with ingenuity, was a weapon more powerful than any technology the Xylar possessed. Lyra guided coalition forces through final clearing operations, evacuating remaining civilians, securing critical zones, and coordinating with human teams to prepare for the next phase of the campaign. She marveled at the humans' discipline, their courage, and their ability to inspire others. They had crossed light years to fight for strangers, risking everything, and had proven that even the most desperate situations could be turned into triumphs. As night fell over Clivar Prime, the planet no longer seemed like a place of hopeless destruction. Flames still burned, but hope burned brighter. Coalition leaders looked to the human fleet as both saviors and teachers. Humanity had shown them what could be achieved when courage, creativity, and determination worked together. Kane's voice cut through the comm channels one last time that day. "Hold position. Maintain vigilance. This is only the beginning, but we have proven what humanity can do. The Xylar Dominion will not see us coming again. Remember, it is not our weapons alone. It is our spirit, our ingenuity, and our courage that make us strong. And that is what will win this war." They had shown that even in the darkest hours, hope could be rekindled, strategies could succeed against impossible odds, and courage could unite species across galaxies. Humanity had unleashed their full potential, and the Xylar Dominion had no choice but to retreat and rethink everything they knew. For the first time in generations, the Coalition felt that victory was possible. And for the humans, the campaign was only beginning. They had proven themselves once more, not just as warriors, but as a species capable of turning despair into hope, fear into action, and impossibility into triumph. The stars above Clivar Prime glimmered with the lights of the human fleet. Lyra smiled, knowing that humanity's arrival had changed the galaxy forever. And she, along with the survivors of her planet, would carry forward the lesson they had brought. Courage, ingenuity, and relentless determination could overcome even the greatest darkness. The Xylar Dominion's command hub floated in orbit over their homeworld, an enormous fortress bristling with weapons, shields, and soldiers trained for a single purpose: domination. From light years away, it had been a symbol of fear and control. Now, after days of relentless human and coalition attacks, it stood battered, damaged, and vulnerable. Commander Elias Kane studied the holographic displays aboard Valiant Dawn. Every calculation, every strategy, every human and coalition maneuver had led to this moment, the final confrontation. Kane turned to his officers. "This is it. The Xylar leadership is inside that hub. If we can take control of the command systems, disable their fleet, and secure their leadership, this war will end. But it won't be easy. They will fight to the last. Stay focused. Follow the plan. And remember, unpredictability is our greatest weapon." Humans and coalition allies are in position. Boarding pods are prepped, and our diversion teams are on schedule. They won't see us coming. Above the fortress, human ships twisted through the void, darting in patterns that Xylar sensors could not predict. Smaller fighters zipped between larger vessels, drawing fire while capital ships moved into precise positions. Boarding pods launched silently, gliding toward the fortress like shadows. Kane led Gamma Task Force himself, guiding pods toward the hub's main docking bays, where human and coalition forces would infiltrate simultaneously. Inside the fortress, Xylar officers were panicked. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and systems failed in rapid succession. "They're inside our defenses," one commander hissed, eyes wide with disbelief. "We are being overrun by humans." Humans did not just fight. They improvised, adapted, and exploited every weakness. Lyra, watching from Clivar Prime through relay communications, marveled at the coordination. She relayed vital intelligence to Kane's teams, guiding them through weak points in the hub's layout. Coalition forces followed closely, inspired and emboldened by humanity's example. Every move humans made seemed impossible, yet effective. Every risk calculated, every maneuver bold. Humanity was more than allies, they were a catalyst for victory. Kane moved through the hub's main corridors, leading a squad that disabled security systems and cleared Xylar defenders. Sparks flew as energy weapons collided, and alarms blared from damaged consoles. The humans were relentless, advancing steadily despite the chaos. Every door they passed through brought them closer to the heart of Xylar Command. Meanwhile, above the fortress, human and coalition ships maintained a constant assault. Xylar reinforcements attempted to break through, but they were trapped in ambushes, dodging fire, and guided into kill zones created by human ingenuity. Every time the Dominion tried to regroup, humans had already adapted. They were not predictable. They were relentless. Inside the command hub, Kane's team finally reached the central chamber where the Xylar High Commander waited. Towering and imposing, the commander's eyes glowed with a cold, calculated fury. "You think your species can challenge us?" the commander hissed. "We have dominated galaxies. We have crushed civilizations. You are nothing." Energy shields deployed, blaster fire met resistance, and human soldiers moved with a combination of courage and strategy that left the Xylar off balance. Engineers worked on control panels, shutting down defense systems while scientists recalibrated energy flows to disable the hub's weaponry. Every action was coordinated, precise, yet bold, like a living, breathing machine of ingenuity. Lyra's voice came over the comms. "Commander Kane, you have one window to access the central control. The Dominion fleet is starting to retreat, but if you hesitate, they will recover." Kane and his specialists worked quickly, bypassing complex security protocols, rerouting power, and overriding the Xylar control systems. The hub's massive shields flickered, faltered, and then collapsed completely. Outside, the Xylar fleet, seeing their command hub disabled, lost cohesion. Human and coalition ships pressed the advantage, destroying or capturing remaining vessels. Ships that had once seemed invincible now floated powerless in space. Kane's strategic planning, combined with human creativity and coalition support, had dismantled the backbone of Xylar control. Inside the hub, the Xylar High Commander fell to his knees, realizing defeat. Kane did not celebrate with violence. Instead, he broadcast a clear message across the hub's comms. The war is over. You will cease hostilities and surrender. Humanity fights to protect life, not to destroy. You will be allowed to live and rebuild, provided you respect the peace. Humanity's combination of courage, ingenuity, and morality had not only defeated them, but commanded respect. Lyra exhaled, relief flooding through her. The humans had done it. They had not only saved her planet, but had shown that even the most powerful enemies could be overcome with determination, creativity, and heart. Coalition forces moved to secure the fortress fully, helping Xylar prisoners and stabilizing systems. Kane stepped onto a platform overlooking the central chamber. He surveyed the aftermath. The chaos had ended, but the potential for rebuilding had begun. "We have won a victory today," he said, speaking to his team and the coalition forces. "Not just because of our weapons, but because of our spirit. Courage, creativity, and determination can change the course of a war. Remember that. It is who we are." Citizens who had lived in fear for months now stepped forward, inspired by the humans who had risked everything to save them. Lyra looked at the stars where the fleet still hovered, gleaming and ready, and felt a deep gratitude she could not put into words. The Xylar Dominion, defeated but alive, would retreat and rethink their place in the galaxy. They had underestimated humanity, and that mistake had cost them. Humans had proven that they were not just survivors, they were innovators, strategists, and protectors, and they had done it without cruelty, without unnecessary violence, relying instead on ingenuity, courage, and unbreakable will. Kane returned to the Bridge of Valiant Dawn, tired but satisfied. The crew moved around him, tending to minor repairs, coordinating rescue efforts, and preparing for the next phase of operations. Humanity had arrived in a distant galaxy, faced an enemy far more advanced than anyone expected, and had changed the course of history. Lyra finally allowed herself to rest. The city around her, though scarred, held life. Coalition leaders began rebuilding, and the survivors looked to the future with renewed hope. Humans had not only fought, they had inspired. They had shown that even when the odds were impossible, courage, ingenuity, and determination could prevail. The stars above Clivar Prime glimmered as humans prepared to leave the system. Kane's final message to the coalition was clear. "We do not stay to rule or conquer, we came to help. The strength of a species is measured not just in its weapons, but in its heart, its mind, and its will to protect life. Remember that, and may your galaxy flourish." The coalition worlds would rebuild, stronger and more united than ever, inspired by a species that had come from across the stars to answer a desperate call. Humanity had unleashed more than an arsenal. They had unleashed hope, creativity, and an example that would echo across the galaxy for generations. And in that moment, Lyra knew with certainty, the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity was a force that could not be ignored, a species that could turn despair into triumph, fear into courage, and impossibility into victory. Their light, like the stars themselves, would guide those who followed.